Hello and welcome back to Real French Connections. We are here in the beautiful city of Bordeaux to talk to Sam and Andrew, who moved here from Texas. Let's go and meet them.
We moved here from Dallas, Texas.
It was the first place that we saw and we fell in love with it.
We can step out of our front door. The tram is a half a block down the street that way, and there's restaurants and shops literally at our doorstep.
I think I've been surprised very pleasantly by just how accommodating people are, how friendly they are.
The culture here is different in that I think it's a little bit more formal. I would say, je suis un avocat, mais aujourd'hui j'ai demi fini. So in French, a rough translation of that is, I used to be an avocado, but now I'm partially dead. So
the fear factor is, it's understandable, but I want something else. I want something new. I want to learn more. Things that I'd never seen before are suddenly part of my everyday life.
So thank you for having us to talk to you. And first, we're in this magnificent apartment. Tell us about it.
Sam, why don't you start, because you're the one who picked this out. So.
Well, about a year ago, we came to Bordeaux to look for apartments. And we saw this one online. I think it had been an Airbnb prior to it becoming a regular rental. But we looked at it, it was the first place that we saw, and we fell in love with it.
Instantly?
Instantly. In fact, it was, we were like, okay, these ceilings, these windows, 3 bedrooms. And so we thought, okay, this is fine. And our purpose in coming to Bordeaux last year was to find an apartment, and we found it.
And was that because you were moving here, or was that because you needed a permanent address?
It was a combination. We obviously had to have a permanent address for a lot of the paperwork, but we had already made the decision to move here, and we're in the process of getting all the paperwork together so that we could make the move.
And where were you coming from?
We moved here from Dallas, Texas. So a very outgoing city, a very dynamic city, a very large city, 7 million people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It's a very, very big city, also very spread out. So it was nice to come to a place, and one of the things we like about this apartment is that it is in the center of the city, and we can step out of our front door. The tram is a half a block down the street that way, and there's restaurants and shops literally at our doorstep.
It has everything, doesn't it, really?
Oh, it does.
And the tram, so what a difference. A city built on trams with so little traffic to where you came from.
Well, that is one of the big differences from our life in the States versus here. In Dallas, you had to drive everywhere. I lived in an apartment there years ago where I had to drive to take the trash to the dumpster.
Seriously?
Seriously, you didn't do anything without the car. And which, it's a whole different way of life. But, we love Dallas, we loved our time there, but, you just notice these differences that make a big difference in your quality of life.
So then that begs the question, what made you come? What was the decision process that actually made you leave a life where you were clearly happy and come over here?
Well, there's a bunch of reasons. First is we like to travel. We've traveled all over the world. We've been blessed in that respect. But one of the things we kept finding is we kept returning to France. Right. We love the culture, we love the people, we love the language, the food, of course, right? And so we had talked about it for many years, that, hey, when we retire, let's try to live in France for a little bit. And I think as with a lot of other people, the pandemic really kind of sent home a message that, you only get one trip on this planet. And so that kind of accelerated our plans. And we started doing our research and visiting different cities here in France, and we just kind of fell in love with Bordeaux.
How old were you when you first visited France?
That is, I was 43. I didn't visit Europe the first time when I was 42. No, 43, because it was Ireland.
2000, yeah.
Yeah, 2000. But also my dad was a soldier here during World War II.
And where was he based?
He traveled all over France. He, like many American soldiers at that era, he didn't talk too much about the war part. What he talked about mostly was that Nice, France. And that was the way he always pronounced it. He would, oh yeah, that Nice, France. But his experience there was he was on R&R. from, whatever. But he just loved the idea of, his experiences there. But, my dad was 19 at the time, and you think about that kind of experience when you're 19, 20 years old.
And do you have similar connections, or what drew you to France, apart from both of you?
Well, I like this guy, so so I'm going to follow him wherever he goes. But no, we have a similar, we've always had a similar passion for the French culture. And when we, in addition to bringing his mom here, we brought my parents here in, I want to say 2007, 2008, the fall of 2007. Yeah, and before we brought him here, I did some genealogy on my father's side of the family, which is a French heritage, because my last name is Fortin. And what we found is we have an ancestor who was born near Le Mans, France. Yeah. He was born in 1620, 1621, and he emigrated from there to New France, Quebec. Quebec City was one of the first 80 or so people to settle in the New World.
So now you're here, and having been here for a year, have you been made to feel welcome?
I think I've been surprised very pleasantly by just how accommodating people are, how friendly they are. They're not necessarily a warmth. I think a lot of people feel that there's a little bit of a standoffishness just because, people aren't going to, hey, how you doing, buddy? Like, you would back in the States,
The culture here is different in that I think it's a little bit more formal. It's not, people in Texas are so nice. They're very gregarious and very loud. And, as soon as you meet somebody, you're instantly their friend, and they're just an open book for you. And it's a little different here. Yeah. But there's a formality of when you go in a store, you don't start with, I want this and this and this. You go in, you're like, good morning, good day, good evening. And, I think for me, Sam's French is much better than mine. So I'm still kind of climbing that learning curve. But they're patient. They're very patient with that. Yeah. They will help you with that. Yeah. You could very easily move here without French language skills and probably get by. But I think if you're going to embrace the whole of the experience of living in this country and respecting that culture, then having a minimum set of French skills, and then dealing with the government or dealing with, a doctor or something like that, the French skills will come in handy.
So have you had any funny incidents involving language?
Yes, a few, right? Because Sam's French is much farther along than mine, but I'm working on it, and I'm not afraid of just putting myself out there, right? Because that's what you have to do. So in my previous life in the United States, I was an executive and a lawyer. And so when people here would ask me, where are you from? Oh, I'm, from les États-Unis. And what did you do? I would say, je suis un avocat, which, as you know, is I'm an avocado. So I would say, je suis un avocat, mais aujourd'hui, j'ai demi-fini. So in French, a rough translation of that is, I used to be an avocado, but now I'm partially dead. So, and people would just look at me, and but they'd be very polite, but that's, the nuances, right? Je suis avocat, I am a lawyer, right? But if you add an article, then it becomes an avocado. But it's okay, because I like avocados, so it just...
Oh, that's a lovely story. I think people like you for that anyway, don't they? That's part of the... they won't forget you next time.
No, absolutely not. I think for me, one of the bigger breakthroughs I had is, and you've experienced this in your life here, is the day I stopped into my local to buy the newspaper and a Diet Coke or whatever, and he asked me, "Ça va?" right? And he started making small talk because I go to the same store, to get the paper and to get that stuff, and that's when I think we really knew we kind of had a breakthrough.
Absolutely
and
lovely. Yeah.
Some of the locals here refer to us as les Texans.
Les
the Texans, yeah.
Did you need help with anything during your move here? How did the process work? Because presumably you needed a visa. Did you bring a car? Did you?
No, we did not bring a car, but you bring up a good question is when, and I think this is maybe a hurdle for a lot of people who are thinking about doing what we did. Yeah. Is there's a lot of paperwork involved. The French government is known for the bureaucracy and the paperwork and mailing things and mailing them back. And when we were going through that process, we were sort of overwhelmed with, getting our life in order, right? We had we had a house to sell. We had to have an estate sale and get rid of all our stuff and sell our cars and, separate from our work and talk to our families. And so when we were going through that process, we wanted to embrace our dream, and we didn't really want to get bogged down in the paperwork.
Yeah, understandable.
And that's where we, doing our research, came across French Connections. And so we were lucky to engage with Richard and the team there, and it has been, I think, a lifesaver and allowed us really to focus on living our dream here and not being knee-deep in paperwork.
That's a lovely way of putting it, and I'm sure that was very helpful at the time, because that's a lot you did to actually leave Texas, wasn't it? Let
It
alone
was.
the part of the story where you were arriving here.
Well, the other thing that French Connections did was they laid out kind of the whole, here's all the things that you're going to need. You need a carte vitale, you're going to need a visa, you're going to need to apply for a carte séjour, you're going to need to consider health insurance, all these things that we may or may not have had that list complete. And it was such a relief to be able to, we can depend on them. They know what they're doing. They're on the ground. They helped us with opening a bank account, which is a
Huge for
very
Americans
difficult,
particularly.
And as soon as they found an opportunity with BNP to open an account for us, and we jumped on it. We could do it from Texas, so we had that.
Even before you came.
Right, we had that all settled so that when we got here, we could immediately start dealing in euros. We didn't have to worry about banking issues and exchange rates and all that sort of thing. So that was very helpful. But all along the way, whether it was through the driver's license that Andrew mentioned, or just the routine of here's how you get your visa, we had a fun story on that. Was these appointments that you have to go to that the French Connection set up for us. We were in Dallas. The appointment was in Houston. So we had scheduled a flight to Houston. It's about an hour flight. We were going to get there late afternoon. The appointment was very early in the next morning. So we thought, we don't want to miss this appointment. We don't. So anyway, we get on the plane in Dallas, and we're on the plane, and the pilot announces it's going to be delayed, and delayed, and delayed. And we're thinking, okay, this could be a problem. So we think, okay, we gotta take this in our own hands. So we got off the plane, went back home, got in our car, and drove to Houston.
Drove the five hours to Houston.
We made the appointment. But,
Bravo.
Well, there's so much that can go wrong in the process. There's you're doing government forms in a different language, a language that may not be native to you. There's a process that you need to follow, and there are people who have been through it before. And having the resources of Richard and the team to let us know, hey, here's the documents we need from you. We're going to send them out, and then in a couple weeks you'll hear this. And if you don't hear from us, let us know. And when we did work with them, they really kind of gave us a menu of different things that we could do with very transparent pricing. And we've kind of worked our way through that list. And I think the biggest surprise for me was you hear all the time about how long things take.
Yes.
And I moved here in December, and by mid-April, I had my carte vitale in hand.
Fantastic.
And I know past performance doesn't guarantee future results, but I think it's a testament to the fact that the team at French Connections knows the process. They know where the pressure points are and who to contact if something gets stuck through that process.
That's right.
And it really did free us up to focus on integrating into our new environment and dealing with the kind of the dissonance you experience when you go from one culture to a next.
Absolutely, yes.
they were also helpful in some of the little details, like this document needs to be translated into French. And they found us immediately, do you want us to employ our service to do this? And absolutely. So that's another thing. I don't need to find a certified French translator. I don't need to do any of that. They already have that in hand.
It's a turnkey team that knows the levers, knows the process, knows the culture, that allows us to focus on pursuing our dream.
Yeah, that's lovely. And pursuing your dream, you rented this beautiful apartment. Did you bring all this furniture with you?
No, we. This is all part of the furnished apartment, but we everything back in the U.S. we sold or gave away. Our possessions would fit in probably 2 suitcases, 4 boxes, and we have the cats.
And what about things about Bordeaux that you particularly like? It's a beautiful city. There's so much to love. What is it that makes you feel great about living here when you walk out of your front door?
Well, Bordeaux is a very livable city. It's very human scale. You know, we're used to highways and, you know, large buildings and big downtowns. And, you know, the philosophy on city life here is that you should live in the city. So you have all these, you know, ground floor businesses and shops and things like that, and then people that live above them. And so people take advantage of the proximity to these things. There's always some activity going on, whether it's, you know, down in the Place de Quinconce or, you know, some concert. I mean, when we had the Fête de la Musique in June here, that was just lovely, you know, because it was all these little street corner performances. In the Gambetta Park down here, there were 3 or 4, I think, that were.
There was a choir, there was a guy playing the cello. I mean, it was really kind of lovely.
Yeah, and a lot of these things are surprises. You know, we
Yes.
don't necessarily, you know, we're not attuned to all these different activities that are going to happen.
So you've only just had the 1 year
We've just
of
been around
discovering
the-
the surprises, and things will come
Correct.
around, won't they, in the
Right.
second year? By
Well-
the third time, we'll be anticipating them.
And we're very much looking forward to Christmas this year. We were here for Christmas last year, but
We were kind of spinny.
yeah, but the day that he got here was the day that they lit up the Opera House and the.
Clearly not just a coincidence.
It was because I arrived and they flipped a switch. But no,
It must have been magical. Actually.
as Sam said, it's a charming city. It's known as the Belle Dormir, Sleeping Beauty. It is.
And why is it known as that?
Do you know the story? I don't know the story. I think it's because it's kind of always underappreciated.
I think it's something to do with the relationship to Paris.
Okay, so
that Paris
let's
gets
talk
on-
about that,
yeah.
because in terms of architecture, wasn't this the mini Paris, or the first test of the architecture?
I think the locals would say that Paris is the big Bordeaux,
Right.
as opposed to Bordeaux being
Right.
the mini Paris. But Houseman, who is the man who put his imprint on Paris with the grand boulevards and the limestone architecture and all, and the zinc roofs and all that stuff, he was here first. And so, you know, as you're walking around the city, it has a very similar feel to that, with the grand buildings and the unique look, right? A kind of harmonized look.
One of the other fun things about this, you know, living in this space, is you wonder what has gone on here over the centuries. You know, I mean, in the floor you can see where doors used to be, or fireplaces, or other things that might have been divisions.
Yeah.
You know, what was this?
But what's amazing for us too is, you know, the United States is a very young country, and this building was built in the 1700s, the building we live in, and that was it was probably built in the late 1700s. So the United States was probably maybe a country when this was built, and if it was, but it was a baby country, right? So much history, and you know, and like Sam says, sometimes we just think about, you know, what's gone on in this building, or what's going on in the square out front, or whatever. Yeah.
So much. So guys, talk me through a typical weekend here in Bordeaux.
Well, I don't know if there's a typical weekend. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we have going on. You know, Friday and Saturday we probably get together with some friends. We've made a number of friends here that you know, we hang out with. Sundays, what we love to do is go to the market on the quay in Chartron. We started doing that, in January, I guess. And at first it was a little bit intimidating, you know, because you go into a market like that and there's all this activity and all these booths, and what are the rules? You know, where do I get into line? What do I ask for? How do this all work? Is this all cash? Is it, you know, do they take cards? And just the kind of questions that go through your head. And of course it's in another language, so you're a little bit intimidated. But what we'd love to do is see what looks good for dinner that night, and we buy a bunch of stuff. We both love to cook. And so we, you know, put together a nice little dinner. Sometimes we'll just get, you know, cheese and bread and have the nice lunch kind of thing. But the market, there are so many nice people there. I mean, there's a woman who has a raw cheese stand, and she's just friendly and lovely to be around. And, you know, it's just a pleasure to see her. She's always happy, always smiling.
And she has really good cheese.
It's just really great cheese.
That helps, doesn't it?
And there are eat-in places there too. You can get oysters virtually any time of the year, and they're amazing.
And where do those oysters come from?
They come just from the Arunchon Bay, right over here. It's all locally sourced.
As fresh.
Yeah,
Can be.
Yeah, this is a big seafood town. Between the estuary of the Garonne and Arcachon, which is a bay not too far away, they have oyster farms and fishing fleets, and so we get great oysters and great seafood, and so that's nice. We like that. Plus, but it's not just seafood. We've got the Dordogne, which is about an hour or two, to the northeast of us, and they have, that's where they grow walnuts and foie gras and of course Bordeaux wine, and so we just feel that we're in this epicenter of cuisine and fresh and local products, and it's wonderful. I think the difference is here it's about quality of life, not quantity of life.
Yes. Yep.
And that's just a nice change for us.
And what would you say, because I think that's a really valid point, what would you say to people who have perhaps always dreamed of coming to France, or perhaps it's a new idea, but don't really feel able to move from the idea to the actual doing it? What would you say to encourage those people?
Wow. Well, you need to pursue your dreams, right? We only get one crack at life, and it can be too short. And what you'll find is it's probably a lot more possible than you think it is, especially when you have resources like French Connections, and when you get to a place, especially here in France, because the people are very accommodating and very helpful. If you're not sure about it being sustainable, as you talked about earlier, or you don't want to be here for long term, you can come for 6 months if you want and give it a shot and stay in a long-term Airbnb. And if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else, right? But give it a shot, right? Would you agree with that, or what would your take be?
Absolutely. I mean, the fear factor is it's understandable. You're going to give up everything that you've known for all your life and suddenly try to embrace something that's different. I look at it the other way around. It's like, well, I did that, and that was fun and it was great, and I still love the U.S. and always will, but I want something else. I want something new. I want to learn more. And I think it's important, particularly, I'm not getting any younger, to keep learning new things, to be active, to be stimulating your brain with this is a new language. This is the new experiences. Things that I'd never seen before are suddenly part of my everyday life, and I think that helps to keep you alive, keep you vibrant, and keep you on the right path of being healthy.
Just thank you, both of you, for the whole experience of talking to you. It's so exciting to see you in such a beautiful place and having such a great time. And I'm really excited to see what happens this time next year when your lease is up. Mm-hmm. Whether you'll stay, I definitely would, or whatever you'll do next. I hope we can really keep in touch.